17 years ago this weekend, Hurricane Katrina took aim at America's Gulf Coast, one of the deadliest and costliest hurricanes in U.S. history. More than 1,800 lives were lost. At least 1 million people were forced to leave their homes, many never returning. Katrina came to represent the nation's failures in terms of disaster preparedness and capacity to respond. That failure had a profound impact on the children whose lives were forever changed. Edward Buckles, Jr. was only 13 years old when Katrina turned his life upside down. A New Orleans native and first-time film director, Buckles spent 7 years documenting the stories of other children who survived the storm. The result is the HBO documentary film Katrina Babies on HBO and HBO Max.
It's so nice to talk to you, and congratulations on the documentary.
Thank you so much. I'm super happy to be here, sitting here talking to you.
You've said that you were very reluctant to place yourself in the film, but you were a young kid when Katrina happened. Why the reluctance?
It was survivor's guilt. Because I had evacuated and because of the fact that I didn't stay during the storm and I wasn't, in the water, I wasn't in my attic. I didn't think that I had any trauma. I didn't think that I had a story when it came to Hurricane Katrina. And many of us feel that way. And often in the Black community, we compare traumas. Well, your trauma was worse than mine, so mine doesn't matter. I just wanted people to know that, those who stayed and those who evacuated, are dealing with trauma here.
You ask a number of young, now 30-year-old-ish people, so has anyone ever asked you this before? Have you ever talked about this before, right? All this trauma. And they always say no.
It blew my mind the first time Maisha Williams, who's a good friend of mine, and she started to cry, and she told me that no one had ever asked her any of these questions. It floored me, but also it added validation to my journey. I started this project at a very young age, and it was intimidating. And sometimes I would question myself, is this story important?
Apparently it is important. Your debut film is on HBO.
I feel very blessed and I'm honored. When I first started this project, I just wanted to be heard and seen. But I think that being here, that really shows me that the narrative can be owned by people, who experienced it, and the narrative can be changed.
You talk about violence in the film. Do you think there is a connection between the violence that in the aftermath? I mean, I saw the violence go up in the aftermath of Katrina, immediate, short-term aftermath.
Drawing parallels between the current state of New Orleans when it comes to violence, youth violence, and what happened in 2005. That was important to me because of the fact that when trauma is suppressed, it causes things like PTSD, it causes things like anxiety, it causes things like anger, right? It should be a no-brainer that maybe Hurricane Katrina, as well as all of the other traumas that we experience in Black and disenfranchised neighborhoods, had something to do with it.
You talk a lot about displacement of communities, especially Black communities. It's almost like gentrification, but sped up.
The same reason that they invited us back into the city so soon when our houses weren't ready is probably the same reason that they're not reporting on how many of us are being priced out of our houses in New Orleans. It's because the city is benefiting off of it.
You have said that you become furious when people talk about people who were pulled out or left the city as refugees as opposed to evacuees.
When you see all of those Black bodies and Black people, in the streets of New Orleans in 2005, it looked like it was a third world country. There was an opportunity there to not call us refugees, but to say that why is America treating its citizens like that?
Why do you think this story resonates 17 years later?
I think that there's no better time for us to revisit 2005 and, check on the kids, because we are an example of what happens when you experience a great trauma and you don't have help. And it seems like no one cares. So I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic that, this film can serve as an example of what to do.
Edward Buckles Jr. is a first-time film director, and his film is called Katrina Babies. It's fantastic, by the way. I should have said that from the get-go, but
Thank you.
It is fantastic.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
The HBO documentary film Katrina Babies is on HBO and HBO Max.